have an Okay, we'll go with this. How about that? We good? All right. I'll work on this between service. It's just, it's just a very fine little thing there, and I find that to be frustrating. All right. Good to see everybody. So here, this is the funky time of year when it comes to the church calendar, because we're finishing up year B, and we're going into year C. So the calendar's always started it like this. You get to the little apocalyptic section of the text that you're in. So we're in Mark, and Mark 13 is the little apocalypse. And then you have to take a week off. So you start to approach the end of the world text, and then you get into it a little bit. And then next Sunday, you get a break because it's Christ the King Sunday, which is the last day of the church calendar year, which the whole year leads you up to that day saying, hey, y'all, guess what? Jesus is Lord of all the earth and Lord of each and every one of us. Hurrah, yay, yay, yay. And then we all go, okay, that's good. And then you come back the next week to the first Sunday of Advent, which is you pick up the apocalyptic section of the new book from where it left off. And so this year we'll come back, it'll be in Luke. And then you go back to that again. And so I get two dark weeks with Christ the King in the middle. And so everybody, you talk about the end 1 week, and then you pick it up 2 weeks later. So you feel like didn't I just do this? And that's the way the church calendar works, because the first Sunday of Advent is supposed to be the image that you pick up from the Advent wreath, that the light gets brighter as you get closer to Christmas. But the part that we kind of leave out of Advent, people like me, we tend not to focus on, was that Advent is the expectation of the Christ coming the first time and coming in all his glory in completion as well. But we tend to focus on the first one, right? Because we live in a culture that is heavily focused on the first one, the baby Jesus, this little golden fleece diapers, yeah, that guy, yeah, always, yeah, Talladega Nights all over again every year. And so, but it's interesting how that the way the passage works, that you were going to lead into it today from the first part of Mark chapter 13, and then the whole chapter is really is called the Little Apocalypse. And for those who are kind of new to this class, this was I was telling every year it always takes me back to the 90s, where this is my master's thesis is on this chapter, and Deb had so much fun watching every apocalyptic movie that ever came out for 4 years, and so we would just sit for hours and watch these movies and see how far off they were from what the passage really was about. But to me, this is the anchor. Now this is just Neil. Okay, everybody understand that there are a lot of other theologians who would totally disagree with me, and that's fine. They're wrong. But that Mark chapter 13 really is the anchor of this book, because it spends its time at the end of it saying, watch, stay awake, watch, stay awake. And that the entire book of Mark is paying attention to who this man Jesus is and who he says he is. Because all throughout the book, the question keeps coming up from the disciples and from other people. Who is this man? Who is this man that that has power over demons? Who is this man who has power over sickness? Who is this man who has authority to preach like he does? Who is this man who can control the weather when he says, "Peace, be still"? And who is this man? That's the question all throughout the book. And we know at the end, the centurion, the non-Christian, says, "Hey, there is truly this man is the Son of God," and you get your answer. But all throughout the book, you have these people, these disciples, who keep missing the point over and over. And chapter 13 uses this apocalyptic literature kind of style to say, stay awake, keep your eyes open, always be watching for Jesus. And that this notion is people spend so much time looking for these huge cataclysmic issues in the world for Jesus, and among us enormous aspects of life to look for Jesus. And the point of Mark often is you find Jesus in really small ways that you miss when you're not paying attention. So stay awake. So that's how I read the book. So again, others would totally say I'm wrong, but I don't care. Here we go. So Mark chapter 13. Remember, we're listening for what's familiar, what isn't familiar, and what jumps out at us in our life at this point in time. Okay. So as he came out of by the way, remember what was last week? Anybody remember? The widow and the giving of the two. Okay, remember Jesus said, "Hey, all these other people giving on me, pay attention to her. Pay attention to the widow." Right? Very next story. Think about that in context. So we come out of that from the 2 coins. Now, as he came out of the temple, one of his disciples, doesn't get named, said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what a large buildings." And then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? No, not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." And when he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, and John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this be? And what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" And then Jesus began to say to them, "Be aware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. And when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place. But the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes in various places, and there will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." There you go. Familiar? Bit, okay? Well, we know it comes up every 3 years. Well, actually, it comes up every year because this passage in some way, shape, or form is in Matthew and Mark and Luke. So they all include what we call the little apocalypse. Okay. So what jumps out to you? What's familiar? What unfamiliar? What do you go, I don't remember that part. They always want a sign. I love that. We'll get to that. They always want a sign of knowing when this will take place. He's talking about the temple. He's talking about the temple in Jerusalem. This is the one that's been rebuilt after it had been destroyed before. So this is the second temple. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, 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 yeah. Large, yeah. And if Mark is first, then Luke is kind of embellishing the story, which is what Mark's a rough writer. He kind of Mark's grammar is not great. He just likes to, he just blurts stuff out. He's that guy. Uh, yeah, he wants to, and he does. And then and Luke and Matthew come along, and they go, "Oh, come on, Mark, let's do a little better here," and they clean it up a little. So there you go, gotcha. So they want signs, right? They're looking for signs. They are. Interesting. So what are the signs that Jesus tells them? Wars, rumors of wars, nations against nations. Okay, yeah, kind of like what we have going on now, and yeah, 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 up, yeah, yeah, we've, yeah, yeah, and guess what? These, I mean, these aren't really good signs because there's never been a time in human history where there haven't been wars, rumors of wars, famines, um, earthquakes. I mean, of course, and now people say, well, there are more earthquakes now. Well, they're registered now. Yeah, I mean, we just have more science, to know that where they are. Hmm? Fu- Yeah. Well, that's a great question, Phil. How do we know? And he says, yeah, yeah. Well, this one, and in this one, he's saying, I am he. I am. Well, I think too, it points out that we really do have to be careful about people who want to kind of take that role in the world, as far as wanting to be that guy that people follow. You know. Uh, yeah. And yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. That it's a great, and this is where I'm coming in. I mean, this is where I'm willing to die in the ditch of institutional parts. I mean, I know church has its flaws, and I know that as a particular church, we have our flaws and we have our inconsistencies and our problems. Uh, and people can stand on the outside and go, yeah, I don't come to church because y'all fight and y'all gossip and y'all do this and do that. And I'm like, well, it sounds like you're doing the exact same thing. But I mean, that it's easier to stand somewhere else and point at the institution and go, y'all are corrupt and y'all are bad. But I'm going to say all this from out here instead of in the mix of what is, and so we do recognize, and that's why it's also one of the main reasons I love being a Presbyterian, is that in the polity and in the institution itself, we're acknowledging our theology of total depravity, that we all fall short, and that's why we don't leave things up to the one guy or gal to make call all the shots. I don't. That's, I may get blamed for a lot of things, but when it comes down to it, people who sit on session and committees know he didn't make that decision. We made that decision, and I think that's the most important part is that when we get to these people who are like, I am the guy, I can do this, y'all really need me. That's when it gets scary, like I'm the ultimate of ultimates, and that's where I think, well, we can really get led astray. And if you study kind of cult-like behavior, in our day growing up, in the 70s, it was called the shepherding movement. And the leaders, what they would do was they would, you have to, we had a youth group where they kidded about or talk, you should even bring who you're going to date before us to see if we can approve or not. See, I mean, we're not going to do that, but maybe we should, that sort of thing. And so when you start getting into that ultimate control, I think that's where you start finding those people. And then when you start finding those people who go, I've got the dates figured out here. We know when this is going to be. And I do notice these days on Facebook, you see many more of those memes coming up. Hey, wars, rumors of wars. We're here. And I'm like, yeah. And they said that. Hal Lindsey said that in the 70s. Jack Van Impe said it in the 80s, 90s. And even early in the 2000s. The only reason he stopped now, I think he's dead. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he's not. But, I mean, they use over and over and over again. And maybe the point here is, especially Jesus' signs, and he says, these aren't even the signs. This is just the beginning. It's not really the end. It's that they're so vague that we've been waiting 2,000 years for this, and it's just going to keep. So it's profitable, I guess, to do that. That's where Phil says that's where the minister gets his jet from. You run this. It kind of end times thing. People love this stuff because it's not just the disciples who want to know. We all kind of wish it's in the psychology of religion, people tend to want to be the last generation because there's something really special about being the worst and being the last. We're the worst generation, and Jesus had to come back for it. And that is the psychology of this kind of notion of religion. We were there in the end. We were the worst. We were the reason. Whew. And but that kind of seems to be prevalent within that notion of religion.
But the disciples are everybody that now is hearing it in real time.
Right.
So it's still hard. Some of it's still hard to comprehend and believe.
Yes. What?
So they opened the door and told us, let's go. This is going to happen.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe.
Right. Well, but then again, some do. I mean, in 1988, Edgar Wisnett was in Central Florida, and we were in college there at a Pentecostal school. 88 Reasons Why Jesus Will Come Back in 1988, September the 22nd or 23rd or 24th. He kind of picked a few days, kind of gave himself some wiggle room. And it's insane, but people there in Pentecostal circles bought it, and they went out and maxed out credit cards, quit their jobs, and when September rolled into October, and the building cycle came due, and they didn't have a job, I'm like, maybe I messed up here. And so the wonderful approach from where we are as Presbyterians is we're like, in the Reformed tradition, we're like, this doesn't make sense. Because he does say later in chapter 13, no one knows the hour except the Father. I don't even know. I don't even know. So why do we spend so much time worrying about that when really what we should be focusing on is staying awake and watching for those moments where Jesus comes into our lives on a practical, everyday basis.
We want that one last chance to repent.
We want that. That's right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Kind of the Homer Simpson. He's in one episode that I love from The Simpsons where they're talking about this, and Lisa says to him, "Well, Dad, what happens if you you just die or something. He says, well, I'm always looking forward to that deathbed repentance experience, so, right. Okay, and so, but yet, Jesus, remember what just happened, what just took place with these disciples right before these disciples start talking about this amazing building. Jesus points out to them this little widow who has done something really small that no one else would see, but it was huge in the kingdom of God. And the first thing, I tell you, the disciples in Mark don't get it. The first thing one of the disciples does is Jesus says, hey, look at this little widow right here. Pay attention to her. And they walk outside, and one of the disciples goes, woo, look at this incredible building, man. This is amazing. And Jesus is going, oh my God, you guys don't get it. What are you doing? I mean, quit paying attention to these magnanimous things or these major catastrophic things, and pay attention to the moment, and pay attention to these people who are being faithful in these ways that go unnoticed all the time. That's where the kingdom of God happens to be. Interesting. So what else? Okay. What was that?
About the generation, this generation will see.
Uh-huh. Yes. Verse 39. Oh yeah, you want to, okay. Yeah, Phil wants to, the verse 39, where are we at here? 39. What? Oh.
Truly I tell you,
Go.
this generation
No.
will not pass away
Oh.
until all these things have taken place.
Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. The difficult passage of Mark chapter 13. This is it. So if Jesus is talking about this, and he's talking about that generation, what do y'all think? And Jesus is wrong. Or he's wrong. Yeah. Nobody wants to say that, though, do you, Alan?
Well, we didn't know when the Lord was coming. He might not know when he was coming back again.
And it's ultimately, I mean, if you say that generation, you mean the first generation. That's when it takes place. Now, some would read this as that generation is the generation of when all this happens. Maybe. Or maybe Jesus meant that generation, or the way they wrote it down was he's talking about that generation. And yeah, well, or that they did see, or that generation did see the temple destroyed, because actually in the 60s, I mean, Jesus says this in the 30s, and then in 64 the temple's destroyed. They did see that. At least that generation did. Interesting. But that is jumping ahead. That's in 2 weeks. We'll have to revisit that. Yeah, this in 2 weeks, yeah. This is, in 2 weeks, yeah, now I have to think about what I was going to use for that time to fill that in from that discussion. Yes, 2 weeks ago you said, yeah, Jesus was wrong. Yeah. Now there's your quote that goes way out of context. That Neil said Jesus was wrong. I said, no, that's, if you look at the possibility of the text, that is an option that can be in place. Right. So what do we do with this passage? We live in the Bible Belt South, where people want a cataclysmic ending, and let's face it, our political over the past, couple months, some of the language in it has been dire and drastic from both sides. I'm not going to, or however many sides there are. I don't even know how many there are now, but there are a bunch. And all of these things, and people, I have seen more of these memes lately than I've seen in the past. But that we have all of this stuff. You have, it's kind of set up for this. You have the Middle East got stuff going on. You got, and somehow or another, America has kind of figured itself into this story, which we weren't even around when this was around. So we really have no part in this whatsoever. Especially when it comes to the book of Revelation, people want to kind of include us in there like, we're not here in this story so long ago. But we kind of have some language and some, and we've had some pretty devastating stuff happen too, right? Western North Carolina, kind of close. Of course, there's stuff that happens all over the world, and we don't tend to think about those things in the same light. But, so you have all this stuff. So what do we do with this passage as a church in the Bible Belt South?
Well, I think in this time,
Yeah.
when you're thinking about being deceived with all those things, like I was thinking about, like in North Carolina, all the money that's going their way, are people really going to use it to help people, or are they going to, put it in their pocket and say, yeah, we got, so I think maybe he starts talking there too, that don't be deceived when there is an earthquake, when there is a famine, when there is political
Yeah, unrest. Right.
unrest, that you need to make sure you put your head down and you're in your Bible, and you're connected with God, and you're praying, and you're around fellow believers, instead of getting caught up in all these little
Right.
things that are happening around.
I think that is a great point, and that is kind of one of those ways about worrying, when we worry about being deceived in certain ways, is that our connectedness is so very much important. And you're right, that we do get concerned, don't we, about, okay, am I giving to the right thing here? Is something really gonna, and people in general really do want to help other people. And people in general, too, get really nervous about getting taken. We can all admit that. Huh? And there are, and I would have to say, the answer to your question is this, the answer is yes, we do. Yes, we do give and things work. And yes, we do give, and some people take advantage of that. And that is, it's the one thing that I've told my minister buddies from doing urban ministry in Durham all those years ago, even to this day, because we have people lined up out here and people come in the office all the time. And I say, two things. If you think you're smart enough to where you're not going to get taken, you're self-deceived, number one. And number two, if you do this on any consistent basis and think you're not going to get taken, then you better go find another job, because that's just a part of it. And Jesus never told us that our responsibility is to always get it right. What he said in Matthew 25 was, you took care of the poor. You took care of those who are naked and hungry. And okay, sometimes people are really going to take us. I wish they wouldn't. I really do, because people here, y'all give money and will help anytime I ask. And even when that other guy sends you emails and asks. But wish we could do. I live with that every day.
And,
Mhm.
you kind of have to, I mean, it's happened to me many times.
Right. I will say that we have to, that when we're dealing, especially when I'm dealing with money that y'all give and that the other churches give for HCAM, and I am the chair of that too. We are going to have guidelines because we have to, and I take really seriously dealing with other people's money and gifts that they give because I don't want to mess up. At the same time, I know I'm going to mess up. So, and at the same time, I deal with the fact that I'm probably going to miss it sometimes and miss somebody who really needed the help, and I didn't see it.
Is it better to miss the people that needing the help than to miss the people who are, than to avoid people who are infallible?
It's what I live with every day for HCAM, and I'm going to screw up on both sides. And so I have to live with that.
You don't have to answer the question.
And as I tell everybody, we're doing the best we can, and we have to live with that. I wish I had a better answer, but I don't. And so the struggle continues. And again, I think that's the part where it comes into the Christian faith and to reading texts like this, is that it's the tension we live with, and that's a part of being baptized. That people want to look at baptism is that Jesus makes everything hunky-dory. And actually sometimes it does just the opposite. But that's what the faith is. And I think too that there's always going to be wars and rumors of wars. There's always going to be these things that come into play. There's always going to be the caption or this allure of grandeur. Hey, Jesus, look at these big buildings. Isn't this beautiful? Isn't this? And ministers live with that, and we all live with that. Ooh, bigger is better, and the more zippers and the like that are on the jean jacket, it's got to be better than long story between us. I thought it was a Christmas present I gave her one time. She hated it because I thought, well, the jean jacket she wants is so plain, and this one has so much more. It was during the Michael Jackson, kind of the Billie Jean era. I thought, well, she'll have to love this more. She did not. She did not. Bigger was not better. Sparkly was not. No, not according to her. But the notion that Jesus is saying, hey, y'all, pay attention to her. Pay attention to the widow. Not pay attention to all this other stuff. That's what I think, that's where we need to pay attention to. It's not as exciting, and it's not as glamorous or look at this big building, but it's faithful. And that's what we're really called to be. Let's pray. Gracious God, we give thanks for your love and your mercy and the challenge of these passages when the world does seem to be coming apart at the seams. Jesus still has us to focus on the little widow. And it does seem like our world tends, personally or nationally or even globally, can sometimes feel like it's coming apart. And you still call us back to simple faith. And that's where we should be.